Getting back to Transformers Prime reviews after only a very short hiatus, I say, lying like a liar. We pick up immediately where the previous episode left off, where Megatron's plot to kill off all of the other Predacons, thinking that Predaking might use them to overthrow him someday, despite the fact that Predaking has given no indication that he would ever do that. In the wake of that, leading to the discovery that certain elements mixed together can create cyber matter, the same way that the Omega Key used to be able to with all of the resources that have been built into it. The Decepticons now want to rebuild the key so that they can recreate this happy accident and use the key as a delivery system to cyberform the Earth and also restore Cybertron. And that is just so much stuff that's happening here, and yet the beginning of this episode does a really good job of sort of reminding us of everything that's been going on. It starts with the Decepticons being absolutely hilarious, again, as has been the pattern lately, with Shockwave trying to murder Starscream. Rightfully so, since Starscream did lead the Autobots to his cave laboratory earlier than he was supposed to and almost got Shockwave killed. And this is an absolutely hilarious scene. Like, Megatron's got jokes here, and Starscream is only saved when he reminds Shockwave that it was because he did that the happy accident happened in the first place that led to the discovery of this new cyber matter. At which point, Shockwave stops trying to murder him, and then Megatron praises them for their teamwork, which I guess in this context means failing upward and then not killing each other, which is logic that I'm not going to argue with, mostly because I wouldn't know where to start. Problem is, the Omega Key is beat the hell up, for lack of a better term, and they don't have the resources to rebuild it the way it was, so they have to use human resources to try to fill in the gaps. Which means that the Autobots are alerted through their government contacts that the Decepticons are up to something, even trying to stop them from getting away with some of the stolen items, leading to a confrontation between Optimus and Soundwave, of all Decepticons, where Optimus actually manages to shoot him down and stun him long enough for them to take him prisoner. Meanwhile, we get a follow-up to Ultra Magnus losing his hand in the last episode in the fight against the transformed Predaking. Ratchet does his best to restore it, but they just don't have the resources or the technology to recreate his hand as it was, so he's without his hammer now, and also he's got this gruesome claw for a hand. And he wants to get right back into the fight. Like, he doesn't come out and say it, and Ultra Magnus is a stoic enough character that you kind of have to read into it. Clearly he wants to prove that he is still capable, right? After losing so badly. And what's really interesting is that Wheeljack is like right there supporting him the entire way, trying to facilitate whatever he needs, right? They've really built a unique camaraderie between themselves at this point, and I like it a lot. But Ratchet says that he needs more time to recover and get used to his new hand, so he sits out the first big battle in this. Not that it really matters, the Decepticons get away with what they wanted, but like I mentioned, the Autobots end up with Soundwave, which is a worthwhile trade-off, in theory, anyway. Problem is, it's Soundwave, and like, literally out of all the Decepticons, including Megatron, I think, like, he's the one least likely to talk. Like, I think Megatron would have broken before Soundwave, straight up. In fact, it's implied here that Soundwave goes so far as to erase his brain so that they can't even dig into it and look at the raw code to try to figure out what he knows. And this is after he trolls them hilariously. And then, as he is actively deleting himself, he delivers a classic savage Soundwave line, which just had to make it into this show somewhere. It's the best.
Soundwave superior, Autobots inferior.
Straight out of the Gen 1 cartoon. Absolutely love it. This is just a great version of Soundwave all around. And this really highlights something that I've been noticing lately, that while the Autobots get like little quips and stuff here and there, the Decepticons are really getting most of the humor in this show. Getting most of the jokes. Even Soundwave gets to be funny here. which I find funny, appropriately enough. Of course, he only does this, though, because Laserbeak is still out flying around somewhere. All he has to do is find Soundwave, and he can reconnect with him and restore him. But he can also upload new directives to Soundwave, so that they don't actually have to contact him and give him new instructions. And they have instructions for him because one of the components in that new cyber matter is Synth-N. And they don't have the complete formula for Synth-N. They don't have anything near the complete formula for Synth-N. And they need a stable version of it in order to create stable cyber matter. So they need Ratchet. They need Ratchet to help them stabilize the formula. And already you can kind of see where this is going. If they perfect Synth-N, and they perfect a way to create new cyber matter to shoot out of the Omega Lock and Cyberform planets, there is an avenue now for Cybertron to be restored by the end of this series. So even after, once the Decepticons go for a power source that Ratchet is able to reason would only really be helpful to them if they were trying to rebuild the Omega Lock, and therefore he figures out what they're doing, and they decide specifically to try to prevent the Decepticons from rebuilding the Omega Lock, so that they can't use it for evil. You still expect that that's what's going to happen. That the Omega Lock is going to be rebuilt, Synthetic Energon is going to become a thing, and Cybertron is going to be restored by the end of this series. That the plan is for this show to end on that happy note. And yet, the knowledge of that doesn't change how tense this situation is. Because Megatron is frickin' losing it, man. And we have no idea what he might try before that happens. Like, Predaking says something about how he's sure that once Megatron has the means to restore Cybertron, he'll make up for the fact that the Autobots destroyed the other Predacons. Because remember, it was actually a Decepticon plot, right? But Predaking doesn't know that. By restoring to life all of the Predacons on Cybertron, so that Predaking will have an army to fight against his and Megatron's shared enemies. And Megatron, being the paranoid asshole that he is, can't stand that. It actively terrifies him. Whereas, if this were Optimus, he would probably choose to trust Predaking, who seemed to be showing him this great degree of loyalty, right? It highlights one of the ways that Megatron is different from Optimus that makes him a weaker leader, whether he is strong or whether he makes good decisions otherwise or not. He doesn't trust anyone that he can't press under his boot until they submit. And his ambition is just too great. The reason that Optimus gives for not allowing the Decepticons to complete the new Omega Lock is because they know that Megatron will try to take over Earth 2. If Megatron had just approached them and made like a treaty or something to like stay to Cybertron, like, it's possible that the Autobots would have been like, all right, well, you'll let us have Earth then, and just kind of went their separate ways, right? Maybe hoping that future peace talks could like rebuild a relationship between their two sides to the point that they could, go back to Cybertron, at least periodically themselves, too. They're the good guys. That's the kind of thing that they would likely at least shoot for, right? Or at the very least, if Megatron weren't so obsessed with Earth enough that Optimus knew for a fact that he would try to cyberform Earth 2, maybe they would have backed off and let him rebuild the lock so that they could try to retake Cybertron for themselves after he restored it. It's because his ambition is so great that they make the choice that they do here that actively makes things more difficult for him. Unfortunately for our heroes, though, whether or not Megatron is making things more difficult for himself than he needs to, things don't look good by the end of this episode. The Autobots are going to try to stop the Decepticons from getting the power source they need in the Antarctic, and yet they're not shutting down for some reason, which is weird. But in the meantime, Megatron has sent Predaking to try to stop them. And he says that they absolutely need to stop the Autobots. They absolutely need this win. So he wants Predaking to go and fight twice as hard in his beast mode, implying that Megatron thinks that Predaking's beast mode is the stronger of the two. But the epic beatdown that he leveled in his robot mode in the previous episode would seem to suggest otherwise, which means this might be another example of Megatron making absolutely stupid decisions that make things harder for himself. Because this might be an example of him just trying to pull on Predaking's leash and get him underfoot, right? And yet, Predaking is very dedicated to this cause. He wants a new Cybertron because he believes in Megatron, and he believes that Megatron will give him his people. So he fights hard enough that when Optimus turns back to fight him one-on-one and give the others a chance to move forward, he seemingly, by the end of this episode, defeats Optimus. Maybe even destroys him. Like, obviously he didn't. We know that, but, like, the episode leaves us wondering. And, while that's happening, Laserbeak finds the Autobot base, breaks in, frees Soundwave, plugs into his chest, reboots him, and Soundwave immediately knows that the Decepticons need Ratchet, and so he's able to make off with Ratchet, despite Agent Fowler's best efforts. Also, Bulkhead and Smokescreen were there too, but they were almost less effective. And that's where the episode leaves us. Ratchet has been taken, Optimus is down. It looks bad. It's a fantastic cliffhanger, and I like this episode a lot. It's very much a transitional episode. It's building towards the new status quo that's going to really kick into gear next episode with Ratchet being a prisoner of the Decepticons. But I really like it for what it is. It has some really good character stuff for the Decepticons, including Megatron just continuing to break down, man. He's just losing it. It's funny. It has some really solid action set pieces. It's just all around a really solid episode of this show, even though it doesn't really progress things a ton. I don't really have much more to say about it than what I already have, so as per usual, what do you guys think of the Transformers Prime episode? Did I even give the title of this one? The title of this one is -1, which I think is actually a really fitting title because it's implying that the -1 is Soundwave, having been kidnapped by the Autobots. By the end, it's Ratchet, having been taken by the Decepticons. Very cute. What do you think of the Transformers Prime episode -1 if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't, especially check out the 2 links down there to the 2 books that I have available for purchase. I really think you guys would like them. In the meantime, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.